Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Maz and you're listening to the Balanced Natural Health podcast, where we share insights from the ancient science and timeless wisdom of Chinese medicine. Knowledge is power, and information from the old natural ways of healing can empower us to live more beautiful, more vibrant, and more vital lives today. In this podcast, I'm going to share simple, accessible, and natural tips that you can incorporate into your everyday life for more vibrant health and wellness. I'm so glad you're here. Today's episode is inspired by a conversation that I frequently find myself having both inside and outside of clinic about my thoughts on and why I don't biohack, detox, or fill myself up with supplements. And I feel like this is a conversation that's coming up more frequently because these days the wellness industry is booming. It's big business, it's churning out lots of money, and everyone's an expert and everyone has a magic hack to provide untold and miraculous benefits. And what I have discovered in my many years in clinic, having had the honor of working with many hundreds of people to restore health and balance in their body, mind, and soul, is that most often simple is best. And even though it might be alluring or glamorous to go for the quick fix or the dramatic biohack or fill ourselves up with all sorts of supplements, what I have found is that it is the simple and persistent things that we do, so the consistency with which we apply them, the small things that we do each and every day that add up to make profound changes. So it doesn't have to be expensive, it doesn't have to be shiny and sparkly, it doesn't have to be complicated, but I do find that those simple, consistent efforts and those things that connect us to Mama Nature every time, so things like eating close to nature, eating whole foods, eliminating additives in our diet, getting our feet on the earth, getting our face in the sun, all of these things done consistently have profound effects on our long-term health. So in this episode, I'll be sharing what I don't do and why I don't do it, and as well as what I do and simple ways that you can start to incorporate these things into your life if you're not doing them already, and how you might expect to feel when you do. So before we go deeper into the episode, I would like to share that I too have been there, done that, with trying all the extreme measures and biohacking and supplementing and filling myself up to the eyeballs with vitamins in my past when I was struggling with chronic health issues. Before I came to Chinese medicine, I had tried all sorts of supplements. I had tried water fasting for many days at a time, or very restrictive dieting. At one point, there was like 3 vegetables that my body was not reacting to. So I definitely tried all the extreme measures to get myself back on track. And what I found was that in some cases they might have given very short-term benefits. So for example, with water fasting, which I did a 5-day water fast back in the day, I felt euphoric at the time because I was running on adrenaline and stress hormones. I was completely disembodied. I was in my mind overriding my body's experience, and I was not actually in my body or my soul or my energetic self. So I felt euphoric that I had overridden my desires to eat, and I was running off that high. But then once I started to reintroduce food again, that very quickly fizzled and my situation got even worse, because at that stage I was working with adrenal fatigue and adrenal burnout. So that drained my reserves even further and set me back, despite that short-term spike of feeling better while I was high on those hormones. And as I've gone along my own health journey and tried all the different things, like literally so many different modalities and therapies and foods and supplements and gadgets and devices, what I discovered actually was that simple was best. And this is something that has become even more clear to me over the years that I've been practicing, that it's the simple things that we do and often the things that we take out that are stopping the body's innate healing mechanism that can have the most profound effects. Because the truth is that our bodies want to heal and they know how to heal. But sometimes what gets in the way is if we're completely drained of chi, of vital life force energy, because of trauma or life demands or our current lifestyle at the moment, or maybe the way that we're not nourishing ourselves, or maybe not absorbing that nourishment perhaps, or not resting enough, or perhaps burning the candle at both ends. So we're draining that vital life force that can actually help us heal when it is in abundance. And if we think about, for example, if we have a cut or a fracture that's set in the right position, the body already knows what to do. It will do its magic and heal all those different types of tissue, restore function to the area, but we just need to get out of the way. And another perspective that I have been very blessed to see borne out again and again in my own life and in clinic is that of the middle way. So in Chinese medicine, our understanding of the world is underpinned by Taoism, which is a way of looking at the flows and rhythms of the natural world, and in the case of Chinese medicine, in harnessing that understanding to align ourselves with our environment and with our life, with the times of year, to optimize our energy and to optimize our health and healing. And in Taoism, we have this idea of the Tao, or the path, or in some instances it's referred to as the middle way. And it's this fundamental premise that actually the middle way between extremes is the best way. It's sustainable, it's not draining, it is a balance between the yin and the yang, and it is the way to long-term health and nourishing our vitality. And as I started to implement this perspective in my own life and in the advice that I suggested in clinic as well, I saw that actually it was things like making sure that we're getting beautiful nutrition, that we're eating regularly throughout the day, that we're getting our sleep in before midnight. Those hours before midnight are so vital for restoring so much of our physiology, our nervous system, our hormones, our ability to respond to stress and to life, and also things like getting out into nature, as I mentioned before. But the other thing also that was really profound in shifting my own health and also in the health of the people I work with is not just what we put in, but also what we remove that is impeding the body's innate drive to heal itself and to restore dynamic balance and order. And these are things that are not natural to life or not aligned with life. So these are things that are unfortunately quite common in our modern life, and they're things like the preservatives and additives and colors that are added to foods. They're things like the phthalates and endocrine or hormone disruptors that are in many fragrances and body care products. Things like aluminium, for example, added to deodorant, or fluoride in toothpaste, which the body then has to work extra hard to detox because the body already has that innate detox ability. But if our beautiful systems are having to work overtime to detox these additional chemicals and inputs, then there's more work to be done and there's less energy available or less focus available to do our healing and repair and restoration of body, mind and soul. So I often talk about this idea of a toxin bucket, and we all have a capacity for detoxing, and the more that we can avoid putting extra stuff in the toxin bucket, the more efficient those detox pathways are. So our liver and our kidneys are doing beautiful work for us, our lymphatic system. These are all ideas that were talked about in our ancient Chinese medical texts thousands of years ago. So they're not new ideas to us, and we know how to work with the body to support detox in a sustainable, not dramatic way. But it involves not putting in the stuff that gets in the way, that is a roadblock or that tangles up the flow of energy through our physiology, through our fascia, through all of our communication pathways. So as I was saying, these are things like the endocrine disruptors found in many common fragrance products, also things like the BPA in plastics, and even register receipts can disrupt our functioning and just add extra load that doesn't need to be there. Another area in which we can greatly reduce the amount of toxins in our toxin bucket is in choosing the water that we drink. So unfortunately, in many modern water supplies now, there's not only additives like fluoride and chlorine, but also the excreted pharmaceuticals of the other people in the area. So pretty gross to think about, isn't it? And sadly, there was some research that found that even in the visceral fat of turtles out to sea, they found residual traces of different chemicals like Viagra, for example, and the contraceptive pill. So just imagine what that's doing to us if we're drinking that water unfiltered, uncleaned, and also if we're soaking in that water or showering in that water. So this is where things like a water filter and even a shower water filter can be a wonderful investment to help reduce some of the load that goes into that toxin bucket. And you can also get whole house systems as well if that's something that is an option if you're in a place long term. So another area that can have a really big impact on our toxin bucket is our exposure to non-native electromagnetic fields. And these are things like, yes, Wi-Fi, the wiring in our walls, just the whole electrosmog that we're surrounded by, even the emissions from our phones, which are so close to us at all times. There is abundant research now that shows the effects of these on our bodies and on our health. So ways that we can mitigate this or reduce this is simple things like, for example, I turn my cellular, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth off at all times except when I'm actively sending something that requires it. So my phone is just operating like an old school phone. It's receiving texts and phone calls, but I'm not pumping out data in my data and electromagnetic fields and hooking up to the 5G in my immediate vicinity. So the next step beyond that is that you might look at hardwiring your house so that instead of Wi-Fi pumping out through the air, you have the old school way, like when we used to have to plug into the wall. We can do that with phones and computers. There's lots of great resources on how to do that. Even a simple thing like turning our phones off at night and having them outside of the bedroom. So I know some people still sleep with their phones under their pillow or next to the bed, but you would be amazed at what a difference it can make to just give your body a break from that constant barrage of those non-native frequencies. And instead we can get out into Mother Nature. And one thing that has been quite profound for some of my patients, they've reported back, is the suggestion to get your feet on the earth or get your body on the earth. So take your shoes off, get your feet on the grass or the sand or dirt, wherever you are, and allow your body to connect with that powerful information field of the earth and of Mother Nature. So the earth has a pulse called the Schumann resonance, which is of a similar frequency to our alpha and theta waves. So these are the brain waves when our body, mind and soul is in a relaxed yet open and aware state. So it's a really healthy state to be in. It provides vital space and resources for the body to do its healing and innate processes of detox and repair and restoration. And even just 15 minutes of connecting to the earth can yield profound benefits. There's been some studies showing that it can reduce inflammation, and there's now many professional athletes that have that incorporated into their regime to reduce inflammation and increase recovery and performance. So this is a really simple thing that's accessible to all of us, and we don't need to be biohacking or drilling down onto the minutiae of specific functions like in mitochondria or ATP or what our cells are doing, because actually all of this research is just confirming that it's these simple things like getting in the sun, connecting to the earth, they actually create measurable changes. So we don't need to go for the expensive gadgets or interventions. We just need to get out into Mother Nature, which is pretty amazing, right? So we've talked about nourishing ourselves with food that is close to Mother Nature and devoid of modern chemicals that can disrupt our vital processes. We've talked about getting our feet on the earth, about healthy electromagnetic fields. Sunshine is another big one. I've seen regular sun exposure throughout the day do amazing things for healing a whole lot of conditions. So sun has heat, which allows the water in our bodies, which we are predominantly water, we're watery beings. So sunlight has the ability to structure and bring coherence to the water in our bodies, which then allows for efficient communication, healing and repair. So I think there's been a lot of damage done to the collective physiology by being trapped inside and away from natural light. but it doesn't take masses of sunlight to start to reverse that process. So even just a few minutes at several different times throughout the day will give you access to different wavelengths and angles of light, which all have unique benefits. So that's another big thing that's so simple and accessible and free. It's amazing, love it. And I love seeing that there's more and more awareness about things like infrared saunas, for example. They're great so long as we're not over sweating and draining the yang. But I think we can also get so many benefits just from getting some sunshine onto our bodies, onto as much of our skin as we possibly can. There's been some really interesting work around sun exposure and the improvement in cardiovascular health. So even people recovering from major heart attacks are having profound results just from getting their bodies out into the sun and getting their feet on the earth. So sun, whole foods, reducing toxins. On this topic, there's more in episodes 2 and 3 of the podcast talking about hormone health. So I talk about common disruptors to hormone health and to the detox pathways of the liver and simple tweaks that you can make. So if you'd like more info, go to episodes 2 and 3 of the podcast. So back to our list, we've talked about connecting with nature, and I would also add emotional health. So in Chinese medicine, we understand that the emotions all have a profound and specific effect on the qi of the body. So of the metabolic functions of the body, on how communication is happening, on how restoration and repair and healing is happening. So for example, worry can knot the energy and tangle it, or shock can scatter it, or anger can cause it to rise. So any kind of emotion that is not given a healthy expression and not given healthy acknowledgement and witnessing can get caught in the body and interrupt physiology and function. And this is something that modern medicine acknowledges as well. So acknowledges the impacts of stress, for example, or certain traumatic events that have not been completely processed, or certain emotional habits that are showing a correlation with certain types of diseases in different parts of the body. So a practice like talking to a friend or journaling. I love stream of consciousness journaling. So writing down all of your thoughts first thing in the morning or at a time of day that you can commit to. So writing down all of your thoughts for 20 minutes. So it doesn't need to be perfect or grammatically correct or to in fact make any sense at all. It can be all swear words, which mine has been sometimes. And you just write for 20 minutes, and it's like doing a brain dump, or like clearing out the cache or closing down all of the browser windows in the brain, which then frees up so much energy for the body to do its vital work. So there was one interesting study that I read where even just 3 days of this stream of consciousness journaling improved the participants' evaluation of how they felt about life. So imagine if you were to do that as a consistent practice, or even for a longer period of time, say over a couple of months, how much stuck emotions we could move out of the body. And even just being with emotions when we feel them and acknowledging them rather than suppressing them, and listening to what they might be telling us. So for example, anger can be a really profound emotion to inform us about what is not working for us, or what is transgressing our boundaries perhaps. Or for example, anxiety might be inviting us to consider whether we're anxious out of habit or because that's what our body's been used to running, or if there's actually something present in that moment that is causing that, or needs that are not being met. Basically, that is fundamentally what it comes down to. So I think if we can have the presence and the patience to sit with these emotions, they can give us profound gifts and insight, as well as freeing up the energy movement in our body, mind, and soul. So to that end, also, I love the practice outlined in the book Letting Go by Dr. David Hawkins, of just sitting and feeling your emotions when they come through. And if you just allow a minute or two for each emotion and just sit with it in your body and in your soul, in your energy field, rather than in the mind, because the mind's going to come up with lots of lovely stories to take us away from the experience. But if we just sit with the physical experience of where is it sitting and what kind of motion is it doing? Is it in fact doing something like the binding up of energy that Chinese medicine talks about, or the scattering of it? What does it feel like? And what I found is that just that quiet awareness and presence with that emotion allows it to soften and melt, and often there's another emotion behind it, but it really does lift the heaviness or lift the congestion that we can feel when these emotions are suppressed. So that's another big thing that we can do for our vitality and health that again is accessible and doesn't cost us anything except just presence and awareness. So that's a list of some of the practices that I do regularly to maintain health and to optimize my energy and my vital force, and to allow my body to do what it innately knows how to do, which is to detox. So I don't go in for colonics or any crazy things like that. I just gently, consistently give my body the conditions that it needs to detox. So for me, a detox meal is like steamed veggies, some beautiful chicken, and some rice, for example, with herbs and spices on top. And that's something that I have most days. So I'm consistently looking at allowing my system to do its job rather than having short-term measures that will shock the body and then we go back to the habits that we had beforehand. So our bodies already know what to do. It doesn't have to be dramatic. And while I'm on the topic of colonics, I have had so many patients come to me with devastated digestion and spleen chi after having had liters and liters of water flush through their colon, flushing out all of the beautiful microbiome. And yes, it's true that our microbiome, which is the collection of all of the bacteria and microbes that live within and on our bodies, can be imbalanced, and that when it's balanced and appropriate to us, Stella's just having a little shake if you heard that, and when it's balanced, we have better health. So we do absolutely need to bring about balance, and we do this through supporting digestion, through cooked and warm food and drink. But flushing out our existing microbiome is like having a garden full of weeds and just setting fire to it. I mean, it might work for you, but there are also much less drastic ways. And you're also then depriving the soil of, say, its vital structure of the roots that are holding everything in place, so everything can wash away in a deluge. And in fact, I have seen just that with patients that have come to me after colonics, is they have uncontrollable diarrhea afterwards and loose stools because there's nothing to hold on to. It's that figurative, basically, like the earth element is the spleen. The spleen is the foundation of our health, and if we flush it out with water, it can't hold on to nutrition. So if we're looking at balancing out digestion, we'll consider things like warming herbs like ginger, for example, and making sure that we're chewing our food well, making sure that our food is easy to digest so that that digestion, which is needing some boosting and bolstering, doesn't have to work extra hard. So that's why we're so big about the cooked and warm food and drinks. So now that I've had my little rant about colonics, we can go on and talk about biohacking and why I am not a huge fan. And this is because our bodies are not machines. They are much more than the sum of their parts. They're not detailed little pathways that can be pulled out in isolation and studied without it having an effect on the rest of the body. So we are a living symphony that is singing in harmony, not just with all the aspects of ourselves, but also with the world around us. We can't be isolated from our climate, our environment, our social environment, and Chinese medicine understands this very well. Whereas when we biohack, in the examples I've seen, we are looking at very specific teeny tiny little pathways, which, by the way, can express or perform differently across individuals as well. Like, we can't reduce it to just single aspects. So when we look at one aspect and we supplement with a particular vitamin or mineral, we're forgetting that there's usually a supporting cast and crew related to that vitamin or mineral that supports absorption and function, which is why I am always a fan of whole foods and herbs as a way of getting our supplementation and nutrition. The body knows how to work with that. All these foods are already in a structured water format, which the body will work with more easily. and we have all of the cofactors that go with the vitamin in question or the mineral in question that will support the body's ability to work with it. I think very often when we're supplementing with a lot of stuff, we're just making expensive poos. And again, it's such a massive booming business, isn't it? Like, it's in every supermarket has shelves of supplements. Everywhere you look, you can buy supplements, but is it being absorbed? That's the big question. Is it being absorbed? Is the body working with it? Is the spleen able to recognize it? Or is it just creating expensive poo and pee, which I think it is. So personally, these days, I just supplement with organic beef liver, which is amazing for B vitamins and supports my iron personally. And I take cod liver oil as well. So Arctic cod liver oil, which has a whole host of fat-soluble vitamins. I found that very profound for me. And other than that, just organic veggies, an organic diet as much as possible. Obviously, when I eat out, I can't control that, but as much as possible getting full nutrition from Mama Nature herself. And I have found that investing that money in whole foods has given me better results than investing in lots and lots of supplements. And if organic is not available, there's also the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 list, which many of you might have heard about. So this is updated every year, and it highlights the best Clean 15 veggies or fruit out there that are minimally affected by pesticides and other chemicals sprayed on them, and also the Dirty Dozen. So they're the ones that really absorb all those nasties, and they're the ones to avoid. And on the Clean 15 list, there's always lots of beautiful produce. So if organic is not available at a particular point, then this is the next best option. We can still really work with that to support our physiology and function and not to overload our little toxin buckets as well. So back to my thoughts on biohacking, I have found that in most cases that I've looked into, there are natural ways to achieve what the biohackers are promising. And in fact, the science has come full circle back to ancient science and back to what Chinese medicine outlined 2,000 years ago about ways to optimize our health. So yes, we can go the complicated way and the expensive way, or we could just come back to our bodies, our innate wisdom, and get balanced that way. So that's why it's important, and why one thing that I work with in clinic as well is supporting people in tuning into the messages of their body. So we can trust our bodies. I think in the modern day, we have been told we can't. We've been told to fear them, to control them with our minds, to submit them to all sorts of testing because they can't be trusted and they're just a ticking time bomb. But actually, once we start to develop a relationship with our body, mind, and soul, with its feelings and urges and cravings, and get curious about what is behind them, then we realize that it's like a very advanced dashboard or control panel giving us an update on exactly what is going on in our system and what we need to do to tweak it. So we can start small with this. We don't need to make big health decisions based on our gut feeling straight away. But like any skill, the more we practice it, the more finessed and refined and potent it becomes. And this is where things like, for example, taking time before each meal to slow down, take some deep belly breaths, and ask yourself, what do I feel like eating today? What would most nourish me? And tuning into how we feel before we eat, and then tuning into how we feel after we eat, no matter what we chose. Do we feel more energized? Do we feel lighter? Do we feel connected to ourselves? Do we feel gummed up or stuck in some way? Has it affected us in a beneficial way or perhaps not? And then we can start to adjust and make changes. So none of this is to guilt or judge. It's just good input. It's research basically. So even if I eat something that perhaps hasn't served me, I consider it as research, and now I know that that's how my body responds, and so then I can choose differently. Or for example, if I experience a craving, I will ask myself, is this actually a craving, say, for salt? Have I sweated a lot? Do I need to restore electrolytes? Or is it perhaps an emotional or energetic craving? Am I tired? Do I need to stop and have some deep breaths, get my feet on the ground? Do I need to eat something? What do I actually need? Or is it a distraction from an emotion? Maybe I'm feeling overloaded and stressed and I'm not liking that feeling and I want to escape into a sensation. But instead, if I sit with that stress or pressure, then I find often it passes, and so does the craving. So that can be a simple way you can experiment with this in your own life as well. And we are all different, which is why looking at some of the different pathways and processes that biohacking looks at might work for some and not for others, because there might be many different factors or different systems that need to be aligned in a particular way for best results. And this is why I think the ability to tune in to our body, minds, and soul messages is one of the most powerful ways that we can cultivate our health and wellness throughout our lives. That relationship with the messages of our body, or what modern medicine might term symptoms or diseases, that relationship gives us opportunities to course correct, to make changes that will support our vitality and thriving going forward. And we are all different, which is why looking at some of the different pathways and processes that biohacking looks at might work for some and not for others, because there might be many different factors or different systems that need to be aligned in a particular way for best results. And this is why I think the ability to tune in to our body, minds, and soul messages is one of the most powerful ways that we can cultivate our health and wellness throughout our lives. That relationship with the messages of our body, or what modern medicine might term symptoms or diseases, that relationship gives us opportunities to course correct, to make changes that will support our vitality and thriving going forward. The other concern that I have with biohacking and basing our health on research, clinical research and studies, or perhaps tests that promise to look at certain parameters or biomarkers, is that unfortunately much of the modern research today I think can't really be trusted or relied upon. And it's not just me that has this opinion. I'll go into that in a moment. But I think that with statistics, with selection or deselection of outliers in a study group, for example, so if people are performing really well without a drug or intervention and they get thrown out, it gets cherry picked. There can be different statistical analysis put onto the data to give the results that perhaps a researcher might want or be paid to find. And also sometimes these studies look at relative benefit rather than total or actual benefit. So what this means, for example, if there is a new drug coming to market, rather than testing it against no drug, what they might do is test it against an existing drug, which maybe doesn't have much benefit and has some side effects anyway, or poisonous effects or toxic effects. So when the new drug is measured against the old also toxic drug, it doesn't show that there's any new side effects or toxins that come up. So it's not actually a true representation of what is being tested. And to bring home my point, I would like to share a quote from Marcia Angel, who was the editor of the New England Journal of Medicine for 2 decades. So the New England Journal of Medicine is considered to be one of the most prestigious publications in the medical and scientific space. It's up there with the Lancet, and she was the editor for 20 years. And she has gone on to say from her experience that, and I quote, "It is simply no longer possible to believe much of the clinical research that is published, or to rely on the judgment of trusted physicians or authoritative medical guidelines. I take no pleasure in this conclusion, which I reached slowly and reluctantly over my 2 decades as an editor of the New England Journal of Medicine." Just pretty profound, right? That's quite a mic drop statement. So I just want to repeat a part of that. So Marcia Angel said, "It is simply no longer possible to believe much of the clinical research that is published." Like, that's pretty mind-blowing, isn't it? So what are we basing it on? We're basing then health decisions on research that has potentially been funded by bodies where there's a conflict of interest. Maybe there's pharmaceutical bodies, maybe there's financial gain to be made, maybe there are other goals that are not in alignment with health. And she goes on to say to rely on the judgment of trusted physicians or authoritative medical guidelines. So that's interesting too, isn't it? That perhaps what we're told in the mainstream about certain ways to live our life for health is not necessarily the truth. And this is from someone who's been right at the heart of medical research. So once again, what can we trust? If we can't trust the research, if we can't trust what is being published, and I don't say trust the science, because true science is actually the process of inquiry. So if we can't trust what is being presented to us by government bodies or by trusted medical professionals or authoritative, wow, I'm having real trouble with that word today, authoritative medical guidelines, then who do we trust? And this is where I think we trust our bodies, we trust our inner messages, we trust Mama Nature, and we trust ancient medicines and ancient science that has been around for thousands and thousands of years and has been borne out throughout that time and stood the test of time. I know if you're anything like me, you've probably seen the flip-flopping in modern research and modern opinion on now, say for example, butter is bad, now butter is good, eggs were bad, now they're good. It's like, what do we trust? Whereas if we just stick to traditional ways of eating, traditional ways of living and nourishing our health, then I think that's a really safe bet because they have not changed in thousands of years. And continuing on from that, I think that we're currently in a phase of our society where we value mind over all else. We value the intellect. We think we can outthink our way through anything. We ignore emotion or we shut it down as hysterical or overwrought. And I think it's an expression of this imbalance of the masculine and feminine principles. And look, I've been there myself. I have been very much in my mind for a big portion of my life, thinking that I could outthink my way out of any problem or any health situation. But what I learnt over my own journey is that this is not the case. We can't outthink our biology, and we can't override our biology. We can't override mind over body and soul. Our body and soul will always send us messages about what needs to be done. So I think we've come to a point where we need to reintegrate how much value we put on all aspects of our being. So not just glorifying the mind, but also really honoring the messages of the body and soul as well. So I'd like to wrap up this episode and my musings by sharing a conversation I had with a friend recently. So she asked me what I thought about a certain product that was plastered all over social media and that everyone was raving about. And she was like, I'm not really getting like the good vibes about this product. What are your thoughts? And, you know, it was full of the claims, like packed full of antioxidants for longevity and like reversing aging and anti-inflammation and speeding healing and all of these promises, and about mitochondrial health, like big words that sound impressive. But I was saying to her that actually, if we just eat a whole foods diet, that the foods that Mama Nature provides provide all those benefits too. And I was saying I should probably just get better at marketing veggies and herbs, because the truth is that, for example, things like ginger have been shown to reduce inflammation and to be packed full of antioxidants, and also to have an effect on mitochondrial health. Or turmeric or cinnamon or broccoli, which supports many functions in the body. It's great for supporting liver health and detoxification as well. I often recommend it together with many of the other brassica veggies, so in that cabbage cauliflower family, for supporting liver detoxification and liver cleaning of the body. Or things like onions, for example, which are amazing for heart health and have been used by traditional cultures to open up the pathways, the cardiovascular pathways, for example. So if perhaps we got better at marketing veggies, but then no one would stand to make money out of that, but we could totally put the same claims on your farmer's market basket. So packed full of antioxidants, supercharges mitochondrial health, but it's just not as glamorous and shiny. So I wanted to share that little story because that was the final one that pushed me over into sharing all of these musings in an episode, because I think it's something that we can all stand to benefit from, to just coming back to the simple ways, the time-tested ways, things that don't need to be dramatic or heroic. For example, you know, I've talked about ice baths a lot, and I think with ice baths, we're overriding very clear messages of distress from the body, mind, and soul, from the organism, and we're trying to out-mind ourselves by telling us that it's good for ourselves. But actually, if it feels terrible, it's not benefiting us. Whereas it's the simple, daily, small disciplines we can do, like observing our emotions, being present with our reactions to things, by grounding ourselves, by getting our bodies in the sun, by looking at what we leave out just as much as we put in. And I would also add to that list movement and breath. So in Chinese medicine, we have the practice of Qigong. We also have practices like Tai Chi and Tui Na, which is like a push and pull and massage of the fascia pathways of the meridians, and of course acupuncture. So we have all of these beautiful ways to open up the super highways of communication in the body. And one way that we can do that is with breath, with intentional breath, where we're finding the tight spots in the body and with gentle curiosity just allowing them to melt without any kind of pressure or timeline imposed on them. With movement, so even a simple thing like walking. Walking is so amazing for health. It's amazing for spleen. Spleens are often overloaded in modern life due to all of the information that they're digesting, because the spleen digests life experiences and information as well as nutrition. And the spleen likes regular rhythmic movement. So I find walking without any input, without listening to a podcast or music, but just walking, connecting our feet to the earth, breathing, swinging the arms. The spleen channel starts on the big toe and ends on the side of the rib cage under the armpit. So allowing the torso to move will also allow that spleen energy to move and to digest our day, our life experience, and absorb our food. And the breathing and pumping of the limbs will allow qi to move through the body to open up any congested areas. So I hope this has been interesting, inspiring. I would love to hear your own experiences. I would love to hear also how you go with incorporating any of these simple adjustments into your life if you're not already doing them. I know many of you are. I would love for you to share this with anyone who might benefit or be inspired to incorporate these changes into their lives as well. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. All the best.